A couple minutes late here, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Lord, I thank you for this day. I thank you, Lord, for waking us up this morning. I pray, Lord, that you enter in right now and just bless this live. God, I pray, Lord, that whoever needs to be here, whoever is trying to grow closer to you, God, I pray, Lord, that you lead them to this live, God, that they may be blessed by the reading of your word. And Lord, I just pray, God, that you just break down any walls and anything that's keeping your people from you, God. And Lord, I just thank you in advance for everything that you're going to do. Thank you for everything you've done and everything that you're doing right now. And in Jesus' name I pray, thank God, and amen. All right, and we're going to go ahead and get into the word. We ended at we read 37, so we're going into 38. And we will read for half an hour, and I'm guessing we'll probably be done with Genesis tomorrow. So we're going to go ahead and get started. At the time, Judah moved away from his brothers and settled near an Adullamite named Hira. There, Judah saw the daughter of a Canaanite whose name was Shua and married her. After he slept with her, she became pregnant and gave birth to a son, whom she named She became pregnant again and gave birth to a son and named him Onan. Then she gave birth to one more son and named him Shelah. She was in Chezib when she gave birth to him. Judah married his oldest son to a woman named Tamar. But the Lord considered Judah's oldest son immoral, and the Lord put him to death. Judah said to Onan, "Go to your brother's wife, do your duty as her brother-in-law, and provide children for your brother." Onan named the children. Onan knew the children wouldn't be his. So when he slept with his brother's wife, he wasted his semen on the ground, so he wouldn't give his brother children. The Lord considered what he did as wrong and put him to death too. Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Stay as a widow in your father's household until my son Shelah grows up." He thought Shelah would die like his brothers had. So Tamar went and lived in her father's household. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. Then after a period of mourning, he and his neighbor Hirah, the Adullamite, went up to Timnah to those who were, I can't even see here, to those who were shearing his sheep. Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is now on his way up to Timnah to shear his sheep." So Tamar took off the clothing she wore as a widow, covered herself with a veil, put on makeup, and sat down at the entrance of Enaim on the road to Timnah. Since she realized that although Shelah had already grown up, she hadn't been given to him as a wife. Judah saw her and thought she was a prostitute because she had covered her face. He turned to her beside the road and said, "Let me sleep with you," because he didn't know she was his daughter-in-law. She said, "What will you give me for sleeping with you?" He said, "I will give you a kid goat from my flock." She said, "Only if you give me some deposit as security to guarantee that you will send it." He said, "What kind of deposit should I give you?" And she said, "Your seal, its cord, and the staff in your hand." He gave these to her, slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. Then she got up, left, and took off her veil, dressing once again in the clothing she wore as a widow. Judah sent the kid goat with his neighbor the Adullamite, so he could take back the deposits from the woman, but he couldn't find her. He asked the locals of that place, Where's the consecrated worker who was at Enaim on the road? But they said, There's no consecrated worker here. So he went back to Judah and said, I couldn't find her. The locals even said, There's no holy woman here. Judah said, Let her keep everything so we aren't laughed at. I did send this goat, but you couldn't find her. Although about 3 months later, Judah was told, Your daughter-in-law Tamar has become a prostitute and is now pregnant because of it. And Judah said, Bring her out so that she may be burned. When she was brought out, she sent message to her father-in-law, I'm pregnant by the man who owns these things. See if you recognize whose seal, cord, and staff these are. Judah recognized them and said, She's more righteous than I am, because I didn't allow her to marry my son Shelah. Judah never knew her intimately again. When she gave birth, she discovered she had twins in her womb. At birth, one boy put out his hand, and the midwife took it and tied a red thread on his hand, saying, This one came out first. As soon as he pulled his hand back, his brother came out and she said, You've burst out on your own. So he was named Perez. Afterward, his brother with the red thread on his hand came out, and he was named Zerah. When Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, Potiphar, Pharaoh's chief officer, the commander of the royal guard, and an Egyptian, purchased him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man and served in his Egyptian master's household. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made everything he did successful. Potiphar thought highly of Joseph, and Joseph became his assistant. He appointed Joseph head of his household and put everything he had under Joseph's supervision. From the time he appointed Joseph head of his household and everything he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's household and in the field. And the Lord blessed the Egyptian's household because of Joseph. The Lord blessed everything he had, both in the household and in the field. So he handed over everything he had to Joseph and didn't pay attention to anything except the food he ate. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. Some time later, his master's wife became attracted to Joseph and said, Sleep with me. He refused and said to his master's wife, With me here, my master doesn't pay attention to anything in his household. He's put everything he has under my supervision. No one is greater than I am in this household, and he hasn't denied me anything except you, since you are his wife. How could I do this terrible thing and sin against God? Every single day she tried to convince him, but he wouldn't agree to sleep with her, and even to be with her. One day when Joseph arrived at the house to do his work, none of the household's men were there. She grabbed his garment, saying, Lay down with me. But he left his garment in her hand and ran outside. When she realized that he had left his garment in her hands and ran outside, she summoned the men of her house and said to them, Look, my husband brought us a Hebrew to ridicule us. He came to lie down with me, but I screamed. When he heard me raise my voice and scream, he left his garment with me and ran outside. She kept his garment with her until Joseph's master came home, and she told him the same thing. The Hebrew slave whom he brought to us to ridicule me came to me, but when I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment with me and ran outside. When Joseph's master heard the thing that his wife told him, This is what your servant did to me, he was incensed. Joseph's master took him and threw him in jail, the place where the king's prisoners were held. While he was in jail, the Lord was with Joseph and remained loyal to him. He caused the jail's commander to think highly of Joseph. The jail's commander put all of the prisoners in the jail under Joseph's supervision, and he was the one who determined everything that happened there. The jail's commander paid no attention to anything under Joseph's supervision, because the Lord was with him and made everything he did successful. Sometime later, both the wine steward and the baker for Egypt's king offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief wine steward and the chief baker, and he put them under arrest with the commander of the royal guard in the same jail where Joseph was imprisoned. The commander of the royal guard assigned Joseph to assist them. After they had been under arrest for some time, both of them, the wine steward and the baker for Egypt's king, who were imprisoned in the jail, had dreams one night, and each man's dream had its own meaning. When Joseph met them in the morning, he saw that they were upset. He asked the officers of Pharaoh, who were under arrest with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so distressed today?" They answered, "We both had dreams, but there's no one to interpret them." Joseph said to them, "Don't interpretations belong to God? Describe your dreams to me." The chief wine steward described his dream to Joseph. "In my dream, there was a vine right in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. When it budded, and its blossoms appeared, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, so I took the grapes, crushed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in Pharaoh's hands." Joseph said to him, "This is the dream's interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. After 3 days, Pharaoh will give you an audience and return you to your position. You will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just the way things were, just, I'm sorry, just the way things were before you were his wine steward. But please remember me when you are doing well and be loyal to me. Put in a good word for me to Pharaoh, so he sets me free from this prison. I was stolen from the land of the Hebrews, and here too I've done nothing to be thrown into this dungeon." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, "It was the same for me. In my dream, there were 3 baskets of white bread on my head. In the basket on top, in the basket on top, there were baked goods for Pharaoh's food, but birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." Joseph responded, "This is the dream's interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. After 3 days, Pharaoh will give you an audience and will hang you from a tree where birds will peck your flesh from you." The 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a party for all of his servants. Before all the servants, he gave an audience to the chief wine steward and the chief baker. He returned the chief wine steward to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But the chief baker he hanged, just as Joseph had said would happen when he interpreted their dreams for them. But the chief wine steward didn't remember Joseph. He forgot all about him. 2 years later, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing near the Nile. In front of him, 7 healthy-looking, fattened cows climbed up out of the Nile and grazed on the reeds. Just then, 7 other cows, terrible-looking and scrawny, climbed up out of the Nile after them and stood beside them on the bank of the Nile. The terrible-looking scrawny cows devoured the 7 healthy-looking fattened cows. The Pharaoh woke up. He went back to sleep and had a second dream in which 7 ears of grain, full and healthy, grew on a single stalk. Just then, 7 ears of grain, scrawny and scorched by the east end, sprouted after them, and the scrawny ears swallowed up the full and well-formed ears. Then Pharaoh woke up and realized it was a dream. In the morning, he was disturbed and summoned all of Egypt's religious experts and all of its advisors. Pharaoh described his dreams to them, but they couldn't interpret them for Pharaoh. Then the chief wine steward spoke to Pharaoh. "Today, I've just remembered my mistake." Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker under arrest with the commander of the royal guard. Today I've just remembered my mistake. Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker under arrest with the commander of the royal guard. We both dreamed one night, he and I, and each of our dreams had its own interpretation. A young Hebrew man, a servant of the commander of the royal guard, was with us. We described our dreams to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us, giving us an interpretation for each dream. His interpretations came true exactly. Pharaoh restored me to my position, but hanged him. So Pharaoh summoned Joseph, and they quickly brought him from the dungeon. He shaved, changed clothes, and appeared before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said, "You hear a dream you can interpret." Then, wait a minute. Sorry, rewind. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, but no one could interpret it. Then I heard then I heard that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph answered Pharaoh, "It's not me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable response." So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "In my dream, I was standing on the bank of the Nile. In front of me, 7 fattened strout cows climbed up out of the Nile and grazed on the reeds. Just then, 7 other cows, weak and frail and thin, climbed up after them. I've never seen such awful cows in all the land of Egypt. Then the thin, frail cows devoured the first 7 fattened cows. But after they swallowed them whole, no one would have known it. They looked just as bad as they had before. Then I woke up. I went to sleep again and saw in my dream 7 full, healthy ears of grain growing out on one stalk. Just then, 7 hard and thin ears of corn, scorched by the east wind, sprouted after them, and the thin ears swallowed up the healthy ears. I told the religious experts, but they couldn't explain it to me. Joseph said to Pharaoh, "Pharaoh has actually had one dream. God has announced to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 healthy cows are 7 years, and the 7 healthy ears of grain are 7 years. It's actually one dream. The 7 thin, frail cows climbing up after them are 7 years. The 7 thin ears of grain scorched by the east wind are 7 years of famine. It's just as I told Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh that he is what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are now coming throughout the entire land of Egypt. After them, 7 years of famine will appear, and all of the abundance in the land of Egypt will be forgotten. The famine will devastate the land. No one will remember the abundance of the land because the famine that follows will be so very severe. The dream occurred to Pharaoh twice because God has determined to do it, and God will make it happen soon. Now, Pharaoh should find Pharaoh should find an intelligent, wise man and give him authority over the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh should appoint administrators over the land and take 1/5 of all the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. During the good years that are coming, they should collect all such food and store the grain under Pharaoh's control, protecting the food in the cities. This food will be reserved for the 7 years of famine to follow in the land of Egypt so that the land won't be ravaged by the famine. This advice seemed wise to Pharaoh and all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man with more God-given gifts than this one?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, no one is as intelligent and wise as you are. You will be in charge of my kingdom, and all my people will obey your command. Only as the enthroned king will I be greater than you." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Know this, I've given you authority over the entire land of Egypt." Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. He dressed him in linen clothes and put a golden necklace around his neck. He put Joseph on the chariot of his second in command, and everyone in front of him cried out, "Attention! So Pharaoh installed him over the entire land of Egypt. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh. No one will do anything or go anywhere in all the land of Egypt without your permission. Pharaoh renamed Joseph Zephanath Paneah and married him to Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, the priest of Heliopolis. Then Joseph assumed control of the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he began to serve Pharaoh, Egypt's king, when he left Pharaoh's court and traveled through the entire land of Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. He collected all of the food during the 7 years of abundance in the land of Egypt and stored the food in cities. In each city, he stored the food from the field surrounding it. Joseph amassed grain like the sand of the sea. There was so much that he stopped trying to measure it because it was beyond measuring. Before the years of famine arrived, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priestess of Heliopolis, gave birth to 2 sons for Joseph. Joseph named the oldest son Manasseh because he said, God has helped me forget all of my troubles and everyone in my father's household. He named the second Ephraim because he said, God has given me children in the land where I've been treated harshly. 7 years of abundance in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began. Just as Joseph had said, the famine struck every country, but the entire land of Egypt had bread. When the famine ravaged the entire land of Egypt, and the people pleaded to Pharaoh for bread, Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph, do whatever he tells you. The famine covered every part of the land, and Joseph opened all of the granaries and sold grain to the Egyptians. In the land of Egypt, the famine became more and more severe. Every country came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because in every country the famine had also become more severe. And we are going to end it there. It is 7:30 now. So tomorrow I will come back and possibly finish Genesis. We'll see. But if you missed the beginning of this, go ahead and head over to my YouTube channel. This will be posted at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. And I'll be back tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. to continue reading. And what I decided was to do 6 a.m. Monday through Friday and 7 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday, just because it's a little bit more convenient and easier. So we're going to do that. And again, this will be on the YouTube channel, so you can go back, and I've posted every live that I've done. So from the beginning of Genesis till now is already posted, so you can go back and listen to that. And that is it for today. I pray that you have an amazing day and that you all be blessed and be the reason someone smiles. Bye.